Thank you, Salim. You get that bonus. So we will start in 5 minutes. Linda should be here any minute. Oh, there she is. Hey, Linda.
Hi, Ken. How are you?
Very well, thank you. How are you doing today?
I'm okay. I see all these wonderful faces here and some who have been in my workshops over the past few weeks. Salim, for example, perhaps others. Nice to see all of you.
Oh, that's great. Okay, good. Excellent. So unfortunately, the air is a little better here in the Bay Area. I know that doesn't affect everyone, but for us, at least we can breathe again, which is very beneficial. We're delighted to have you here, and we'll just take a couple more minutes for other students to come in.
Sure.
And then we can share your screen and get started. Hopefully everyone got my email with the, I had sent out Professor Von On's some background, the two handouts that I wanted to share with you. So if you just find those in your mail, which I'm doing right now, or two.
I can also put them in the chat again for those who.
Oh yeah, that actually would be great.
But
are they online somewhere?
I've learned from chat that you better wait till everybody's in, or else they won't get the links in chat.
That's another good point.
We'll wait until everybody's in, and
I think also with the chat, if you share it and then at the end of the call, when you save the chat file, it saves all the attachments with it in your Zoom backup, in case. That was really helpful for me.
Yeah, there's always something you learn. And I have to say, Ken wrote this wonderful piece that was so optimistic about the use of technology and its possibilities, with also realistic caution. But I really appreciated that, Ken. I don't know if you shared it with your students.
Actually, I did. Do you guys got that? Okay, thank you. Thank you for bringing that up, Linda. Yeah, I've been revising it, and I just feel that I think there's so many people who started off with a negative view about the online experience, and that we're under so much frustration, and I get that. But I also think that there are things that are benefits, and
yeah. Like you said, like you're all in the front row. I mean, of course you have to have, I mean, if you can turn on your video, that would be great. This is what I'm telling everybody now. If you can turn on your video, that would be fantastic, so we can really kind of see each other a little bit more.
That part of the article stood out to me the most, because I like when I sit in like a second or any row behind the first row, it can get really distracting in class when people come in or out or pull their laptops out. So I always have to run to class early. But with this kind of situation, but in something specifically I learned doing a lot of the online classes is if you put like speaker view, it becomes extremely less distractive, and it's almost as if you're actually sitting up front, and you don't when you're not seeing the whole gallery view. That's something that worked with me.
Good. Well, I think one thing is we're going to be talking about this, the difference in learning styles. And I think what's really important is to understand that this actually is much better for many students, that it matches their learning style very well, but it doesn't work for everyone. And there are some students who really struggle. And so we need to keep that in mind, because it's very different, and no matter how you count it. And so we have to think about that individually, as instructors. and reflect on it, know where the strengths are, try and amplify the strengths as best we can, because that's going to make those students happy and hopefully bring up some of the other students too. They'll get, you know, in a sense of optimism. But I've been in some my classes with my daughters who are in high school, and you know, the students, the teachers come in and they're just like, well, I'm sorry, we're not going to be able to do this and this and this, and we're not doing this, and it's just a huge downer, and then everybody's miserable, and it just feels like, and I'm trying to go the opposite with it, like, hey everybody, we're on exciting new terrain here, let's figure it out, let's work together, you know, let's make the best. So you know, and I think I'm trying to set a good example, because this class, which is quite lively, as you'll see, has really, you know, collectively, we're responsible for a lot of students that we're, you know, that we're teaching, and we're really trying to make the best for them. Yeah. So, all right, well, listen, it's 10, oh good, 4:11. So welcome everyone. I appreciate your coming back tonight. We are really in for a treat, because we have one of the best teachers here with us tonight. Dr. Von Ahn is a professor here, a vice chancellor for education, and she has a background in German studies. She's actually a Berkeley grad, go Bears, and she's been in this role as running the GSI program for 20 years. So she's got a huge amount of accumulated experience and has put together this really exemplary program. And so we become friends over the last couple of years, and I really appreciate it. I invited her last year to give some perspectives, and she gave this talk, which you're going to hear, and it was so effective that it really changed a lot of people's minds and opened up their minds. So I invited her to come back this year, and I hope you'll agree that it will be, you'll see what you're in for. So she's only going to be here for an hour, by the way, so budget your time accordingly. If you have questions, please use the chat, as we've been doing. And if we don't have time to get to everyone's question, she might stay a little bit longer if she can, but we're going to aim for an hour, and then we're going to take a break, and then we'll go on to the other topics that are on the syllabus. So with that, I'm going to turn the floor over to you, Dr. Von Ahn.
Okay, and of course, you know how you try to share your screen and find your slides and they're not showing up.
Oh.
Now let's see.
Okay.
Well, this is interesting because they're open on my desktop, I think.
Oh, here's one thing that I find happens sometimes is when you share screen, you have to click on your desktop and then make sure it shares that.
Oh, okay, let's see now.
That particular window.
Now let's see. Okay. My challenge is always not to get frazzled. Okay.
That's a good one. There you go.
Here we go. Okay, we got it. Okay, so first I want to thank Ken for inviting me. I am thrilled that your department Ken has created this excellent course for you, and that it's also approved for the teaching certificate program. And likewise, I've enjoyed my communication and developing a rapport with you, Ken, and I really appreciate all of you in the class taking the time to take this very seriously. And both for the students that you're teaching now, as Ken pointed out, you know, if you're even teaching 20 students times 33, you know, graduate students, that's a huge number of students that you're affecting, okay? So, but today what we want to talk about, because many students, many of you going into, who are in the, in engineering, may not necessarily be planning on going into an academic teaching position. And so sometimes what happens is, you think, oh, well, this isn't really important to me because I'm going to go into industry or I'm going to go into a pure research job. But ironically, what happens is a lot of the skills that you learn in teaching are very transferable over to those other sites. So today, our goal is twofold. First, to help you sort of see that the skills that you're learning now in teaching are really eminently transferable to other sites, okay, and to a range of careers. And then I want to also help you see that sort of a very simple way in which you can identify the skills that you're learning in any activity that you're doing by looking first at the activity and then the underlying skills that you're developing in the process of doing them. So this might be for other aspects of your graduate studies. You can use this for too, okay? So the first thing I'd like to ask you to do is I'm going to, now I always find this I always like to talk through what's happening for me as a teacher when I'm going through the process. It's in German studies, it's called an alienation effect, where you kind of step back and you talk about what you're experiencing. But for me, what I do now is I go and I get my link and I say, okay, now I believe what you may find, this is a table. If you don't have it already downloaded, I want to put it into the chat for you. Okay, so this is the table that I sent to you. I sent to Ken this morning, but in case you didn't have a chance to open it up, okay? So if you would open up this nice table, it's got 31, like sort of Baskin Robbins ice cream.
Linda?
Yeah.
Linda, we're not seeing that table though. Should that be on the screen? Because we see your slide.
Huh. Okay. No, I'm sorry. You're seeing my slide, but in the, I'm sorry, I put it in the chat.
Oh, okay.
I can open it up too. Hang on one second. I think I can just go right here and open this thing up here. Let's see here. No,
Oh, there it is. Yeah.
okay. So, whoops. Now is it open still? No. Okay. There we go. Okay. You can see that now?
Mm-hmm.
Or no?
Yes.
Okay, good. So what I'd like you to do is this. I'd like everybody to think about a position that you think you might like in the future as a professional. And you're not committing to anything, all right? Put that in the top line there. What type of position are you seeking? Okay, it might be something in government. It might be something in industry, research. It might be an academic position. And then what I'd like you to do is go down the list of skills and check off any one of the skills that you think is needed in that profession. And then the second column, I'd also like for you to put down for anything you check off, how important is that skill? Is it important or somewhat important, let's say SI, or is it very important, VI? Okay, so let's take about 5 minutes to go down methodically through each of these. Is the skill needed? And if so, how important is it? And ignore the third column on the right, okay?
For how important are we assessing it on like a scale from like 1 to 5, or how are we doing that?
Well, it might be something that's needed for the job, but it might not be the central thing that you're going to be assessed on. That's the way I would put it. Like it might be that, you know, a lot of things like general organizational skills you're going to need, and if they really weren't in place, you'd probably be in big trouble, right? But, you know, just somewhat important or very important. Very important would be like the things that you're going to be, I think, evaluated on, okay?
Got it, got it.
Okay, we'll take about another minute. Okay, how are we doing? Does anyone need more time, or is it pretty good? Okay, so let's just see a show of hands, like hands on the screen like this. How many of you checked off, if you go down and count the number that you checked off 25 or more? Mm-hmm. How many of you checked off between 20 and 25? Mm-hmm. How many of you have checked off below 20? Below 20? Okay, I just want to scroll through. These are my pages here. And once again, if you can show your video, that would be great. I see a lot of you have your video off. But okay, so what I can see from those who are visible, that really most of you raised your hand for 25 or more, and there were some between 20 and 25, okay? Now, what this shows you, these are all the skills that you develop in teaching, and there's probably more, okay? And they really are incredibly important in any profession. Every time I do this, I go down the list myself while you're doing it to think about, is there anything there that I don't call upon in my role as an academic administrator every single day or week, okay? And in fact, these are the things that one is generally rated very highly on, and that they're all really important for you to be a good professional, okay? So let's look at how this breaks down in terms of each one of this long list breaks down into a few different categories, okay? And what I want to do is, see if I can get that share again this here. Wait a minute. Still finding my way. Okay. There we go. Okay. So if we go to the, let's see where we are. Okay, here we go. The first set on your list were really communication skills. And many people say that that's really a beauty of teaching, is that you can practice public speaking, but you really take a lot of information and you synthesize it and you present it in a clear and concise manner. And so that's when people say you learn something by teaching it. That's what you're doing. You're synthesizing it, presenting it in a clear and concise manner, right? And you're going to have to do this in any career. Most of you, you're not going to be entry-level professionals, or even if you are at the beginning, you are going to, the research shows that PhDs move up very quickly, and probably master's students as well if you're a master's student. So the idea is you're going to have to give presentations. And this is the communication skills in teaching are very, very important. Conveying complex information to non-experts. Your students are not yet experts, they're becoming experts. Many of the people that you're going to talk to in your professional life, same thing. They're intelligent, but they don't necessarily have the expertise. A lot of your work as a professional is how you ask questions and how you respond to them accurately and give sort of feedback to others, all right? So these are communication skills. This last one's very important because many of you will supervise staff, and you'll need to give constructive feedback to them on their work. And so when you're giving students feedback on their on a test or on their work in a lab, you're giving them constructive feedback, what you'll be doing as a professional as well. Now, organizational skills, sometimes people think these are not so important, At the same time, these are what really sometimes can make and break a professional in terms of it shows that you take things seriously by meeting deadlines, maintaining records, managing time well, multitasking, and knowing how to prioritize your work. So when you're teaching, you have to meet deadlines to get the grades, the papers back to students, the homework. You have to maintain records of their grades and their work. You certainly have to manage time, both within a class period and within the framework of a semester, so that you're balancing your research and your teaching. And multitasking is really the name of the game in any profession, and teaching is certainly one of them, and as will the profession that you take on. And prioritizing work. You always have to make decisions in teaching. What are you going to emphasize? What are you going to spend more time on? And that's a skill. If you practice it and think about it very deeply in anything you're doing, whether it be research or teaching, you're developing that skill for a later point in time for your career, okay? Now these skills, this next set, I think are crucial. Leadership and management skills. You may not realize that this is what you're developing in teaching, but when you're teaching, you are mentoring undergraduates, and some of you work in younger graduate students probably too, or earlier, earlier on in the program. You're mentoring and training junior colleagues. Most of you in your profession will, no matter what profession you're in, will be mentoring and training junior colleagues. Most of us have to do some project management and planning over a certain period of time. Well, a semester or a syllabus, that's a 6-month plan. And the way that you have things unfold and take things up over time and plan out both for the short and long run, those are things you do in teaching, and what you have to do also in any career as a professional. Now, this next one is really important because most of you will be conveying to people you work with what the expectations are for their work. Whether you're working in a lab or an industry, somewhere you're going to be overseeing work and really articulating standards. Well, that's what we do when we teach as well. If you use, for example, a grading rubric, you're showing right there to the students what are the standards. Or when you are solving a problem for the students, on a whiteboard, or working something through with them in office hours, you're modeling what the expectations are for their work. And that's what you'll be doing certainly in your profession as well. And the idea of evaluating the work of junior colleagues, I can tell you that this is something that most people in positions of authority have to, positions of responsibility, I should say, have to evaluate the work of junior colleagues. And you're going to be asked to do that no matter what profession you're in, okay? And that, of course, you're doing when you're grading student work and giving them feedback, or let's say you're looking at a project they're designing and you're kind of helping them move forward step by step, all right? You're guiding someone's work one-on-one, you're coaching, all right? You're coaching as a teacher, and you will be coaching in your profession. Many of you will be guiding the work of a research team if you're in research. Well, when you're teaching, your students in that class, they're your team. The people in your lab that you're running, that if a lab is part of your teaching, it's the team that you are helping to see where their strengths are, how to help them move forward, and how to succeed. And you're doing that in teaching, and you'll do that in other contexts. Now, this next one is really important. In fact, I added this one because I realized, or someone helped me see, that I did not have this. In your classroom, and you know this from the training that you've done in our ethics course and a lot of things you did at the teaching conference, we're trying to make sure that we're not leaving anybody out. We want to make sure people feel a sense of belonging and they're seen in the spaces that they occupy. And that's in a classroom. And when you're working, it's going to be just as important that every member of that research team or every member of that board that you sit on and run, they have to be seen and included, and their perspectives need to be heard, okay? So when you practice this in the classroom, you're practicing it for the future. Now, many of you are also teaching undergraduates how to conduct research. And that is something that you will also be doing. Most of you probably will be conducting research in future careers if you're getting, an advanced degree. and creating the objectives and goals for your work every day when you're teaching. You create goals for what you're going to do in the classroom and what you're going to accomplish. And you also create goals for your students in teaching. And that's also what you'll be doing when you're a professional, because in order to get anything really done well, you have to set goals and then take steps to accomplish them. Okay? Now, interpersonal skills of teaching are incredibly important too, because these are things that you'll take with you as well. Okay? You all know that students come into your classes with different skill levels and different background experience. Well, it's the same thing in a professional career. You're going to hire new people all the time, and you're going to have to see, okay, what skills and strengths do they bring with them? How can I help them get up to speed in other areas? And this is one of the most common issues that happens in teaching. A student will come to your class and not really have the prerequisite, perhaps mastered as well as you'd like. And so you've got to figure out, how can I get this person up to speed? Well, you'll do that in your professional life as well, okay? And then motivation. Most of you will be in teaching. We all know that students sometimes, especially when you're teaching online, you've got to keep them motivated, you've got to keep them accountable. And that's what you'll be doing in your professional life as well. Now, many people don't think that they're going to work with a supervisor in the future, or that you're not working with a supervisor now, but the faculty member that you're teaching with is your supervisor. So when you're interacting with the faculty member who's teaching your course, see this as a person who is going to, in fact, evaluate your work, just as you're going to be evaluating the work of others when you are functioning as a supervisor later on. Now, I can't stress enough how much in teaching diplomacy matters. Even when you're grading a student's paper or a problem set, if you see they got something very fundamental right, but there's something else that they got wrong, you have to be diplomatic in how you convey that, okay? Or if the student, asks you for an exception or an extension and you can't grant it, you've got to be diplomatic in terms of how you say no, right? You don't want to alienate. Well, those are skills you're going to be practicing for your entire professional life. Working as part of a team, same thing. And on a day-to-day basis, all of us make ethical decisions no matter what profession we're in, okay? And then finally, there's a group of other skills that I couldn't really categorize, but getting up to speed on a topic quickly. How many of you are teaching in a class and saying, oh my God, I don't know anything about X, and you got to get up to speed quickly? Well, that happens in the workplace too, when your boss says to you, okay, could you give a short presentation on X? Well, you're going to go home and get up to speed on that quickly. And you'll always be monitoring the progress of your own work, and you're doing that while you're teaching, and you'll be doing that in other professions as well. And this next one, understanding how to respond to feedback on your work, this also has to do with diplomacy. When someone gives you feedback that's not necessarily positive, how you respond in a classroom or in a workplace says a lot about you, and says a lot about how you are as a colleague. So when your students, for example, fill out end of semester evaluations, and they give you feedback that might not be always all that, completely positive, how do you respond? Do you take that as a learning opportunity, or do you get angry and say, oh, what do they know, right? So the way you respond to feedback is important now and also in the future, no matter what career you're in. And then finally, articulating ways to improve your work. This is crucial. Most people like to be working with others who are always thinking of ways to get better. And that's what we say is a hallmark of a good teacher too, the person who really reflects on teaching and is constantly trying to improve student learning through the practice of teaching. And then finally, this is sort of an existential experience that we all have no matter what, but that as graduate students, this is the first thing that graduate students tell us when they start teaching: I'm afraid I'm not going to know something. What am I going to do? How am I going to handle that uncertainty? Well, I hate to tell you this, but it doesn't stop. You get better at handling it and, feeling okay with it. But even, let's say, moving to Zoom, that's made a lot of us have to handle a lot of uncertainty and, be, comfortable and honest where we're having difficulties or need help, okay? So those are the skills. Now, what I want to do now is help you figure out, well, how do I take something that I do in teaching and uncover the skills that are really being developed that I might not immediately see. But what you do here, and you can see on this slide, is you first take the task that you're doing in teaching. So when you apply for a job, you're not going to say in the cover letter that you, to a job where you're going to be, let's say, running a lab, okay? You're not going to say that you have experience grading. But what you're going to do is look at what were the tasks, the subtasks involved in grading that would also be involved in running a lab. So for example, establishing performance standards, assessing the work of others, providing constructive feedback, maintaining records, and making ethical decisions. Now, a cover letter that has those things on the right that says that you have experience with those is much more interesting than one, you know, where if you say, well, I haven't really done anything to prepare for this position. Well, surely you have, if you can uncover the skills beneath these teaching tasks. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to break you into groups, and Ken is going to help with this. And I'd like for you to take 5 minutes. And when you get into your group, I'd say groups of 3, I'd like you to select one of these 3 areas as a group, either serving as a head GSI, teaching section, or teaching a lab. And then I'd like for you to look at that list of skills, and I'd like for you to identify the skills that are involved and are being developed when you're doing that thing, that activity that you chose on the left. So when you're serving as a head GSI, what are the skills that you're developing and what are the skills that are involved, okay? When you're teaching a section, what are the skills you're developing? And when you're teaching a lab, the same thing, okay? So we're gonna break you up into groups of 3 and take about 5 minutes to discuss this with each other. And then we'll come back together.
So just so I know, so groups of 3, so I have 37 people, that's including you and I. So I think what I'll do is I'll just put everybody in.
Okay.
And then
4. It can be groups of 4 too. Yeah, just I mean.
Okay, let me do that because that's actually a little easier. So then,
yeah,
3 to 4 people, that might be a little better. And then I can move people around. Okay, so you're about to go, you have to give permission, and then you'll zoom into your room. How long did you say it should be for?
5 minutes. Once you get into the room, 5 minutes.
Okay, let me just set that 5 minutes. Okay, we're all set. All right, here we go.
How many of you here in the large room already, how many of you want to go into a career that's not an academic career? You don't know. Yeah, I mean, sometimes it takes graduate school to be able to figure it out, right? You're still in a process of development. Okay. Okay. Not sure what that's about. So Ken was probably in a room too, right? Okay. I don't have control over the rooms, I don't think. No. Okay, so Ken's back, I think. Let's see. There you go. Okay, so is everybody back, or we're still missing some, I think? I think your microphone's off, Ken. I mean, it's on. Your microphone's on.
Sorry. I think everybody's coming back now, but I gave them an extra minute, but I think people could have used a lot more time.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Okay.
Well, and I think, yeah, no, I know. I want to make sure we get to this last piece as well. You can do this in your own time too, is take the list and keep thinking through different things and what it is. I mean, this is sort of to get you to see that everything you're doing, like that's why a lot of graduate students think, oh my God, I can't do anything other than 19th century French literature. When in fact, they're researchers. They know how to analyze, they know how to think critically. And so there's a lot more than you can do than just the content of what you're doing. So think about this also in your research too, that these are skills that when you're doing your research and you think, oh my God, I'm just only a specialist in X, step back and realize that many of these things you're developing there too, okay? Okay, so I guess we're all back now. So what I'd like to do is a next piece, I'd like for you to look at that list you made on the table and where you marked down skills that you needed, and they were, obviously somewhat or very important. In the third column, what I'd like to ask you to do is to actually mark, to rate your skill level at the current moment, okay? And that would be either, let me just share my screen again. Okay. Well, wait 1 minute before we do that. Let me ask you a question. I skipped over my own activity that I wanted to do first. So let me ask you, what, when we talk about, for example, being a head GSI, what are some of the skills that you identified for those of you who picked that topic, skills that are being developed in the process of being a head GSI? And feel free to just, raise your hand and shout it out, okay? How many of you did head GSI? Okay, and maybe I'll call on you if it's okay. What did you and your group, Robin, what did your group talk about in terms of the skills being developed?
Yeah, so we figured that the head GSI, in addition to like the teaching and grading things, would also kind of have some more of the leadership and management responsibilities. So we focused on some of the tasks like getting the work of a team, training and mentoring junior colleagues, in addition to the typical ones like providing constructive feedback and articulating standards.
Yeah, and you'll see that certain tasks in teaching cluster around certain skills. So what Robin said just now about in the leadership position of being a head GSI, they really cluster in that leadership and management and often the interpersonal skills, but they also kind of cluster in the organizational skills. So that's why it's really good to be a head GSI, because then you can show that you've had a leadership position and you've developed these skills, okay? What about for those of you who selected teaching a lab? Does anyone want to raise your hand if you did teaching a lab? Okay, Chris, what did you come up with in terms of skills being developed in the process of being a teacher of a lab?
Our group thought that this position of all the three, like probably required the most amount of these skills as a whole, because even though like if you're a head GSI, a lot of times they won't be teaching a lab section with students. So the like skills that are incredibly important for teaching a lab section, like synthesizing information and presenting it clearly, and then or conveying complex information to non-experts, stuff like that might not be as important for a head GSI if they're not teaching a lab section, but it's incredibly important to be able to do if you're interacting with students and teaching. And to go along with that, like fostering a environment, I don't know if there's one specifically for it, but like fostering an environment where students want to participate and feel comfortable participating, and don't feel like if they say something wrong that you're gonna like belittle them or that they would be embarrassed. Like that's incredibly important if you're interacting with students and teaching.
Something I wanted to add, I was in the same group, is we also said that in teaching a lab there's a lot of like hands-on skills, whether it was software, hardware, workshops, any kind of lab in any kind of field that allows for like product development type skills, product management type skills, because you actually deal with like something hands-on, something concrete. And also in that process you like create material, design labs, you develop content or review old content and update it. You need to develop like performance indicators for students and metrics for their performance. That's sort of different than a classroom setting because it's a more specialized area. And then finally, being able to relate to students and think like them is something we brought up on that note.
And in labs, asking questions is really crucial, right? So you don't want to tell someone what to do. You want to use questions to guide them. And that's also what you'll do in many professions, you know, in terms of helping people learn new skills, is you're asking questions like, well, what do you think, what would happen if we did this, right? And so it's very typical in the lab, but also in other settings. Okay, what about those of you who selected teaching section? So any group want to raise their hand and volunteer? What skills do you develop in teaching a section? Let's see, I can go to page 2 here if you got. What's that? Okay, no takers on this one. What groups did teaching section? Anyone? Okay, well, Salim is jumping in again. So before I ask Salim, was there anyone else who did teaching section and would like to contribute?
Sure, yeah, our group.
Great, okay, and Salim understands what I'm doing. Salim understands that what I'm doing right now as a teacher is making sure everybody gets a turn to talk, okay? So thank you, Julie, go ahead.
Sure, so we focused on the skill of asking thought-provoking questions, and kind of one of the main like ways we identified to do that is like through like active listening, and then as a way to kind of do it in real time, and then also recognizing that that also requires preparation of like identifying where students will think things are easy versus difficult, that you might not be able to do it all just on the fly.
And Julie, what kind of profession are you going to be seeking, do you think?
Industry.
Okay. And would you say that those skills will be needed there as well?
Yeah, especially if you're going to be more of like a manager of people, in terms of being thought-provoking.
Yeah, and I can tell you, if you look into the research of where your colleagues are who have finished your programs, they probably are in leadership positions. And it might not be, I don't mean extrovert leadership positions, but I mean, they're probably, you know, in charge of a group of people that they're working with, okay? All right, so now let's go to this last activity, which is to look at your skills and see if there are any that need improvement. And then to think, oh, not just, oh my goodness, I need improvement in public speaking or organizing, you know, materials or time management, but to say, okay, I need to work on that, and what specific steps can I take? So the second handout that I had shared was one that is a goal setting sheet. So many of you will have that, let's see, I'm not doing it that way. I'm going to put a link to it again in let's see, a link. This is a new sheet. This is the goal setting table. And so if you go down the table that you filled in, look at the ones, go down the table and first identify any of the skills on the left that you checked off that you need. Which ones do you think that, are they, how do you rate your skill in that area? Is it, I think I have the 3 levels there. It's sort of below par or average or very good. So give yourself, you can use a 1, 2, or 3 also. 1 being low, 2 being okay, good enough, and 3, you're good to go in that area. And mark down each one of your skill level in all of those skills that are needed for your position. Okay, so first let's do that.
How do you know if you're good at something?
Haha. Excellent.
Or bad? I mean, either or.
Well, right now we're dealing with, it's very subjective. You are being the, but what I would do is I would, after today, save this list and sit down with a friend that you trust or a partner that you trust and go through this list and ask you, score them. Okay, so you rate how they are, you think they are on all of these things, and have them give you, marks for how they think you, would score on this, so that someone else on the outside is rating you and giving you feedback, much like you would give a student, and then compare notes and to see. And that, of course, will show you the extent to which you have a distorted view of yourself. But probably what it will show you is that you, there may be, but it may just sort of confirm that, yes, you do have strengths in one area and other areas you need to improve. So try to be honest. Like, I know that I'm notorious, like I have difficulties with deadlines all the time. And I know that when I work on things like this, I have to say, yes, deadlines are really my area that I need to work on. Okay, so be honest with yourself. All right, so go down the list and mark them and see which ones might need improvement and which ones are good to go. Okay.
So they should pick the 3 that maybe for them are most.
That would be the next step.
Oh, okay. Just look at all of them. Okay.
Yeah, well, first look at all of them and rate them in the 3rd column. And then once you've rated them, the goal setting table that I've put into the chat, and I think that's the table that you should use to pick out 3 areas where you really know that you need to work on things, okay, based on what you've just filled out and how you've assessed your skills. Put those on the left-hand side. And then on the right-hand side of the goal setting sheet, put specific concrete steps that you can take over the next few months this semester to work on those areas, okay? So I can also pull this up as a shared, on the screen, I think. Oh, that's not it. That's not it. Now you think you have these things open and you might, no, but it's in the chat, okay? The link to the goal setting sheet.
Excuse me, can you guys edit the sheet?
What's that?
Can you guys edit the?
It's in chat.
Yeah, but I cannot. I have no access to edit the.
No, you're not supposed to add it there. You just copy it.
Oh, okay.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Oh, actually, I just realized I just sent this only to one person for some reason. If you don't have it, here it is. Okay, so I know that it's 5 o'clock, but do we have a couple more minutes, Ken? Could we spend a few more minutes on this?
Yes, absolutely. If everybody, yeah, we actually go till 6, so this is fine, and we'll take a break whenever you're done. No, so you're fine.
Okay, great. Well, that's great. So how are we doing there? Have you identified a few areas and articulated some steps that you could take? Why don't you raise your hand if you feel like you're pretty much done with this sheet? Okay. How many need more time? And it's okay if you need more time. Okay. Okay. Let's take another minute to finish this out. Left-hand side, the 3 areas you'd like to work on. Right-hand side, specific steps you can take over the next few months. Okay. Okay, so now what I'd like to do is actually do one more breakout room. And here's what I'd like you to do in the breakout rooms, is to compare notes. So share with your colleague 1 or 2 areas that you've identified and the steps that you're going to take, okay? Now, the good thing is that your colleague may be really great at time management. You may not be so great at time management. They can help you kind of think through what are some steps that you can take to work on that area, okay? And if this feels too vulnerable to you, just pick one that's going to make you feel least vulnerable. But the thing is that goal setting with a colleague and really working on accountability issues too is one of the most powerful ways for you to improve your professional skills, okay? So let's have you, and the understanding here in this session today is that what you share with your colleagues is between you. It's not to go and be talked about at a party in the department or with a faculty member, okay? So let's treat what you're talking about with your colleagues as confidential so that you can feel safer, all right? Okay, so Ken, can you put people in groups for, I'd say 5 minutes, and then we'll come back.
Okay, I'm going to do everybody just 2 to a room, okay?
Good. Yeah, then we can just.
And if you're in a room, Linda and I are probably going to get randomly put into rooms, and then if that happens, I'll move you around accordingly. So just stay tuned if you're in a room with one of us, okay? So let's see if this works. Mallory. Okay, I see you weren't you've come back. So how about you and I do this together? Sound good? You're muted though.
Hi. Hi.
No problem. Okay. Yeah, this isn't perfect. I don't know what happened to. Oh, there's Linda. Hold on, I'm gonna move her. Hold on one more second here. Okay. All right. So what did you come up with?
So time management. I've always had that problem, and even